heater. Action, right, good morning. Okay, welcome back, Project FoXDaWG Day 20. This is a project to turn this Harley-Davidson Dyna wide glide into something far more modern looking and as it should be. Now, thank you so much for your amazing support so far. This is moving along at a pace and I really am properly on schedule. I'm really pleased with where we're going with this. The wheels are in, there's a couple of brackets to take off today. There are 3 more pieces of chrome to remove. There's a front bracket for the brake caliper, the rear one, and a little piece of trim I forgot to take off. Once they're scuffed up, then it's washed down. That and the other dozen pieces of chrome I've pre-scuffed already. Once all that chrome work is washed off and degreased, I can mask the place out and start blowing paint on it. Now that's going to take about 2 hours, I reckon, in which time hopefully that little heater there will have warmed this place up from 5 degrees fridge that it is right now to 20 odd degrees, a little bit more balmy and ready for paint. So there we are, wish me luck. Let's get stuck in. Right, okay. I want to answer something that's come up time and again in the comments in the last couple of weeks, and I want to put it to bed completely. It's regarding the spacing of this front wheel. I made the spacers for it. I had to make them slightly differently to the original spacers because in the front wheel, the original front wheel, the hub itself was slightly offset. It was a little bit wider one side than the other, so the spacers have to take up that distance. But this has a symmetrical hub. It's a universal hub. It's exactly the same spacing from the centre line of the rim either side. Now, a lot of you are saying, quite correctly, that if you've got a symmetrical hub on a symmetrical rim, you should have it absolutely bang on between the fork legs. You should have exactly the same size spacers. Well, of course, that's completely logical. But what those of you who are insisting that are not taking account of is that I have a shouldered axle. Front axles on motorcycles aren't just a straight axle. The rear is, but not the front. The front has a step in it, and that step forms part of the spacing on this side. Therefore, you need a slightly smaller spacer. If that's not so obvious, let me show you. I'm going to bring the camera in. I'm going to show you exactly why this bike has a fatter spacer on this side and a thinner one on this side, yet it is dead on exactly correctly spaced down the centre line. So let's bring you in and I'll show you first why that is. It was all to do with the shape and anatomy of the axle itself. I'll show you. Right, here you can see in the brake disc side, the left-hand side as you sit on the bike, we've got the thick, fat spacer that I made. And then over this side, you've got, focus, this little skinny spacer instead, and that there is a gap here. And some of you have pointed out that this is a gap, that spacer should have come out and filled that, so that that spacer is then the same thickness as the one over the other side. It's all part of this axle. That piece of metal in there, down in that little gap, there, that is part of this. It is a shoulder, a step down. So let me just pull the axle out a little bit and you'll actually see it. Right, so as I bring the axle out now, it's going to come out quite a way. I want you to see that here is a little shoulder, like a lip on the axle. And if I put that in, that's obviously got play, and then as soon as that goes in through the hole in the fork leg, now that's solid. So that's the diameter of this hole in the fork leg. And as we push it through, there, okay, hopefully you can now see that the spacer is 19mm internal diameter, and that's where it stops on this shoulder. So as that shoulder comes in, it wedges that spacer there, and that's the correct place for the axle. This is a floating fork leg. It floats sideways, as you can see. If I do that, you can see it moves side to side. And the principle is that now I get that hard up against that spacer now, and that gives me here, if I come in that way, that gives me 16mm gap. So this gap here overall is 16mm, and it takes the form of that spacer and that protruding bit of axle shoulder. That makes a 16mm gap here. On the other side, 16mm. Right, there we are. And you finally do up your axle by holding the hole the other side with a screwdriver so that's still and the axle doesn't spin. Torque it up to its correct torque, and finally do up this floating leg on the other side. The reason for the floating leg, quite simply, as you can see, it's free to move therefore it's not pinched in. It's impossible to pinch it in. You leave that loose, do up your axle, then do up the clamp underneath, and those fork legs are dead straight. Obviously a fork leg that's pinched in is going to jam up. Even if it's only microscopically pinched in, it's going to wear much more quickly. The fork bushes inside are going to wear, the fork seals are going to wear, and it's not going to be a nice supple movement on the forks either. So that's the answer to that one. So hopefully that answers the massively common question, why have I got asymmetric spacers? That's the reason why. Because this side it's a full spacer, and this side it's a spacer and a little bit of the axle doing the rest of the work. But there is 16mm either side exactly. So this wheel is perfectly centrally spaced, and while I'm at it, it's perfectly directioned, and everything about this front end is correct. So can I move on? Thank you very much. Right, okay, now that's, so look, nearly 11:30, so that's a couple of hours so far. Happy with what I've done so far. This plastic, I've put a little bit more of it up than I might have done. Big areas of it everywhere, and that's for a reason. The last time I used it, I found out that it attracts dust. It literally draws the dust towards it and sticks it to it. And when you sweep it with your hand, it doesn't come off. It moves around, but it doesn't come, it kind of sticks to it. And now I don't know whether that's static electricity or something. You know, like kind of rub a balloon on your sleeve and stick it to the wall, that stuff, I don't know, but it works. It really does. This plastic, it drags the dust out of the atmosphere. Now, that silver stuff you saw in my hand, that's chrome and aluminium from the sanding back of those final three pieces, and it's so fine you could probably call it colloidal chrome, and if you know what that is, that's pretty dangerous. So I'm gonna, as my Scottish friends put it, GTF out of here for the next hour and let nature do its work and get all the dust out of this atmosphere. Then I'll come back when it's all done. Hopefully the temperature will be up to normal, and wash all that stuff off and start blowing paint. So let's go and get a cup of tea. See you in an hour. Right, just a very quick one before I start blowing paint. 22 degrees centigrade is what it is in here now, and it's important if you're going to do this in your own shed or your own garage, don't just get it up to temperature and as soon as it's up to temperature on your thermometer start painting, because the metal that you're going to paint will not have got up to temperature yet, certainly not as quick as the air gets up to. The air gets up to temp in no time at all, 20 minutes, half an hour, but the metal takes hours. So make sure, as I have here, I've taken 6 hours, 3:30 now. It's been 6 hours since I came in here and that heat has been on since the moment I walked in. So it's 5.5 centigrade when I walked in, it's now 22, but it's been 22 for at least 3 hours, and that's given the chance for all that metal to stabilise with the room temperature around it, so when you spray the paint on, it doesn't shock it and leave a grainy finish, just in case you need.
Born in 46, raised up in the sticks, somewhere in North Carolina. We spend a lifetime making moonshine and smoking homemade cigarettes, soaking up the sunshine, drinking in the moonlight, sharing good times with his friends. One last liquor run, then he said he was done, living the good life in the hills. When he was found, they tore his whole steel down. He didn't even seem to care. Well, then they took him in and found him guilty of nothing more than making shine. They gave him 30 years, didn't even draw a tear, 'cause he knew he'd never do the time.
Right, can't do any more, you know the drill, that is it, absolutely stoked with that. Honestly, not a single run, fisheye, curtain sag, absolutely nothing, and I proper laid it on because I really want that to look good. Now it's floated out beautifully due to the fabulous temperature, got that absolutely right. All of the circumstances went well today. There's normally something that goes wrong, but not today. That is an absolute beaner. I'm totally happy with it. It's at least as good, if not better than the other stuff. So it'll all look great together. Once it's had 48 hours to set off, maybe 3 days, maybe more, I'm gonna bang it all on the bike, start making it all look good, see what it looks like with all that black on, and then it just leaves the regular tins, the tank, the fenders, and that sort of thing to do. Some stuff with the carburetor. There's a few more bits to do, but honestly, we are so close. This bike may even be finished before schedule, I'm not sure. It may give us some time to do something creative with other things as we go along, but here we are. That's that today. I can't do any more. I'm going to update the board and then leave you with that drying off. Take it easy, ride safe. See you next time.